Picture this. You're building a React app with a search bar or a button that triggers an action, but as users interact, rapid clicks or keystrokes cause chaos, flooding your app with unnecessary requests or actions. As in this example, when the user types something into the input field, I write the value to the console so that the action is triggered every time a key is pressed. Imagine if you had to make an API call to validate the input every time the user typed something, you would bombard your backend this way. That's where debouncing can help. Debouncing delays the execution of the change handler or click handler by starting a timer. The timer is typically set for a specific duration, such as a few hundred milliseconds. If the event handler is fired before the timer expires, the timer is reset. This ensures that the actual action is executed only when the user stops typing. But enough talk, let's take a look at how we can implement this in React. I will modify the change handler a bit. I call the setTimeout function with a timeout of 400 milliseconds. The actual action of the handler is placed inside the callback function of setTimeout. Then I use the useRef hook to create a ref that holds the timeout ID, and I set the return value of the setTimeout function to this ref. Next, inside the callback function of setTimeout, I set the timeout ref to undefined. The next step is very important. At the beginning of the change handler, I check if the timeout ref is set. If it is, that means there's an active timeout running, so we abort that timeout and start a new one. And that's all we have to do. Let's see if it works. I'm typing into input field, and as long as I'm typing, nothing's happening. When I stop typing, I see the output in the console. Perfect.
But wait! There's more!
I think this functionality could be useful in different scenarios, so it would make sense to make it reusable, for example with a custom hook. So I create this new file called useDebouncedEventHandler, and in that file I create a function of the same name, which will be my custom hook. It's a generic arrow function that expects a function which is the actual handler to be executed and the timer milliseconds. Then I copy the ref and change handler from before, and instead of the console log statement, I call the handler function that is passed in the hook function. The change handler function is then returned. I also have to customize some types and use the second parameter of the hook to specify the milliseconds for the timeout. Now the custom hook is ready and I can use it in my component. Here I can remove the old change handler and instead retrieve the handler function from my hook. I pass the function to execute and the 400 milliseconds to the hook, and we are ready to go. As you can see, it still works like a charm. Awesome!
But wait! There's more!
You can use this not only for input fields, but literally for anything, such as a button click handler. I'll show you. I create a button and use our fancy custom hook to get the click handler. And boom, I click the button very often and fast and nothing happens, but when I stop, the handler function is executed. So that's debouncing, ladies and gentlemen. Super easy to implement, but also super useful in some scenarios. Feel free to let me know what you think of this implementation in the comments. If you want to know how to create a context menu in React, check out this video next. Thanks for watching. Bye.